Hey everybody, we're going to get started here in just a few minutes, but I do want to test the audio. So if you can hear me, please type yes into your question box. Hello everybody, welcome to today's webinar on financial wellness. Before we get started, just a couple items to take care of. We will have some time for some more questions at the end of the presentation, and you can type those into the question box in the lower portion of your control panel. We will be posting a recording of the webinar on our blog. That link will be shown at the end. And if you would like a PDF copy of the presentation, there will be a link to download that on that same post as the recording as well. And if your question does not get answered today, please email our support inbox, which will be shown at the end as well. So today we're going to cover a topic that we haven't done before at Health Check, financial wellness. We are very grateful to have Amy from Charles Schwab joining us today to provide our expert advice, which would certainly not be something that I would be able to give on this topic. So welcome and thank you to Amy. She'll be touching base here in a second. And so for the agenda, I will just start off with a quick section on why we've chosen to cover this topic. And then Amy will be answering some of the questions we have received on financial wellness and give us some great tips and suggestions on how we can get started on the path to a more secure spot when it comes to our money and in turn, our health. So why did we choose to do a topic that isn't in our normal area? Well, let's start with a question here and a statistic. Could you pay an unexpected bill of $1,000? As you can see, about 2/3 of households making $50,000 to $100,000 per year would have trouble paying an unexpected bill. And I know many are below this line of income as well, making it even harder. So think about it. When you get an unexpected bill, or if you're having trouble keeping up with your normal expenses, what happens? For most of us, our stress response kicks in, right? We start to get anxious, our heart rate increases, all sorts of chemical reactions go on in our bodies, in our minds, in our brains, and we go through all sorts of emotions thinking about how are we going to keep these bills paid. Now, we don't have time today to go into everything that stress does to our body. We've got other webinars on our blog about that, but we know that this is a factor in many areas of our health. Things like blood pressure, heart disease, quality of sleep, anxiety, depression, and so much more. It touches our physical, mental, and emotional health. And these issues can cause us to miss work, right? So it not only affects us, but it affects our businesses and turns into a much bigger issue. So we want to take some time today to give you some tools to get you on the right track. So we will jump right in. The first question that I'm sure many of us have struggled with, where do I even start? For most of us, that's going to be figuring out where we are and where we need to be, and that comes with creating a budget. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy so she can get us pointed in the right direction.
Thank you, Shelby. I really appreciate it. And just for a little background, my name is Amy Ober, and I've worked for Charles Schwab for about 18 years now in lots of different departments. And I was an advisor in our active trader department. I was an advisor for our high net worth clients, for our Schwab private client group. And every investor, regardless of what they are coming to us to ask questions with, has the same issues. They want to know how to prioritize their paycheck. They want to know what kind of budget they should create so that they can get the most out of their money. But at this point, right now, I'm leading a team of financial consultants here at Schwab that are dedicated to our employees. And our employees have the same questions as you probably all have too. So we're dedicated to answering and providing guidance on those questions to our employees from the get-go. So in terms of how to start a budget, we believe that financial wellness and reduction of stress can start at work. When you think about what to do with your paycheck, your company is paying you this paycheck, and the question is what to do with it. So what's the best way to get the most use out of your money? And like every other project that you undertake, you really need to start with a current estate. So you have some money here where you have your paycheck. What do you do first? And we know that, if you're thinking about a budget, people know how to budget. They know what a budget is, the inflows and outflows of your money, but they don't know where to start. So I think that a written budget will help you keep track of how much you earn, your income, and how much you spend, which is your expenses. So step one is planning a budget involving, what is your income, figure out what your spending priorities are and what your trade-offs are. So basically you're establishing a cash flow plan that lets you know how much you can spend each month and how much you can save. So first, take you need to divide your expenses and income. And then what you do is you look at what your expenses are and determine whether you have, these are non-discretionary, like your needs, or discretionary, like your wants. So the non-discretionary expenses are the must-haves, such as your mortgage, rent, groceries, transportation, insurance, premium, taxes, those kind of things. Your discretionary expenses are the nice-to-haves, the extras, such as restaurants or entertainment, travel, even clothing. And then what you do is you set up your list of income. Don't forget, not just your W-2 income from your company or wherever your income is coming from. Don't forget your bonuses, your gifts, income from rental property, interest income, government checks, or any other source. And then what you do is you put those numbers down on paper and you come up with a plan. So once you add up your income, you itemize your expenses, and then simply do the math. If you're coming up short, you have to look at what you're spending money on, and you have to prioritize it. So use a spending tracker. We have one on schwabmoneywise.com. We also know that there are online tools like mint.com, things like that, to make sure that you are really able to zoom in and identify what your budget looks like and what you're spending your money on. Hopefully that answers your question. Shelby, would you like to go to the next slide?
Absolutely. All right, so we started the budget. We're prioritizing. How much should we be saving every month? Where do we go from there?
So this is a really great question. And what I like to do is refer back to our 8 savings fundamentals. So we have 8 savings fundamentals that we refer everyone to, and they may not be always in order, but at least we are addressing what your savings should look like. So number 1, we would like for you to contribute to your company's retirement plan up to the maximum employer match. So at our company, if you put $5,000 into the 401k, we'll match you at $5,000. And above and beyond that, the rest is your money. And there are IRS limits to how much you can contribute, but make sure you are not going away from some of that free money that your company is offering you. So maximum, make sure that you are contributing to the retirement plan to the max that your company will match. Number 2, pay off non-deductible, high-interest rate debt, like credit cards. These credit cards can make you go backward in what you're trying to do. So if you no longer have to pay 13% or 25% or whatever high rate you owe on debt, you can keep that money for other things. Third is to create an emergency fund, which will help you keep from digging into long-term investments or borrowing at an unattractive rate, such as like a credit card. And if you need cash, it'll be there in a hurry. It's sitting there in cash in an emergency fund for just an event. Number 4 is to contribute the maximum allowed into tax-advantaged retirement accounts. So like an IRA or a tax-advantaged HSA account, health savings account. So the more you set aside, the more secure your future may be. And then finally, if you're saving for a down payment on a home, if you are paying down tax-deductible high-interest rate debt, such as a mortgage, if you're saving for a child's education, these are things that may ebb and flow in terms of prioritization. But if you can check off all of these boxes, then you want to put money into an account where you can actually invest as well. Investing really helps you stay ahead of inflation, so your money needs to be able to earn more, and traditional savings accounts will definitely pay, but investing could give you a higher rate of return.
Great. So you touched a little bit on contributing to your retirement fund with work and things. How much should we be saving for retirement?
This is an interesting question because retirement is expensive. We know this. If you don't have a whole lot of income coming in, you have to make an adjustment and determine how much you can spend in retirement. And depending on where you live and your lifestyle, you may need up to $1 million or more. The challenge is really how to get there. So saving 10% of your annual salary in your 20s and continuing to save is really a great place to start. If you start later, and the percentages we know, you can see from this slide that they actually go up quite a bit. The reality is that lots of people will have far less than $1 million, And there's a recent Employee Benefits Research Institute study showing that nearly 43% of American households are projected to run short on retirement savings. So start with the general guidelines. If you start in your 20s, save at least 10% of your pre-tax income. If you start in your 30s, save 15 to 20%. If you're in your 40s, you'll need to save 30%. It's a lot, I know. So if you can save that, be mindful of how you invest it, and be smart about, tax advantaged accounts and not taking on too much risk for your portfolio, but investing it so that it can grow.
Perfect. So changing gears a little bit here, just what are some typical money mistakes that you see and that you help people with?
Is it weird that I really like this question?
Not at all.
I love this question because I think you can learn from people's experience. And the more you talk to people about your investments or what they've done with their money, you know that people have made mistakes. So when you are reading this slide, there is somewhat of a common theme, and that's spending too much or going into debt. But really, the number one underlying factor of the money mistakes people make is not having a plan or not thinking ahead. So Terry Schwab-Pomerantz, who runs our Schwab MoneyWise site and does a lot of blogging and a lot of kind of education for our clients and anyone out there, did a survey to some of her family and friends and Schwab employees and so forth. And this list of what you're seeing in front of you is what came from that survey. So number one, took out more than needed in student loans. Number two, had the down payment. We were ready to buy a house, but we're priced out of the market. Number three, I'm starting to save late. How do I catch up? Number four is I went into debt paying for our daughter's wedding. So again, a lot of these things are not planning properly and not having a way of saying, here's my goal, here's how, or here's when it needs to be completed, and something will change to make you use that money, whether it is the wedding or it is starting retirement. But make sure that you have a plan in place. Make sure you have a backup plan, and something like an emergency fund just in case you get derailed. You don't want to go into debt from a derailment. You want to make sure that you have an emergency fund to plan for it.
Great. And so you just talked about that. Going into debt is a big theme of people's mistakes. So, but we hear good and bad debt. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, this is a good one too. I think that there's this misconception that having debt is always bad. And that's not true. I mean, having debt and the use of credit cards and mortgages and things like that is a way of life, and we all know that. And it's actually quite healthy to have some debt if you can keep it minimal. And as a general rule, try not to borrow or use your credit cards for things like vacations or things that depreciate in value, such as cars and home appliances. And it's not that all debt is bad. Certain types of debt can actually provide opportunities to improve your financial future. So if you're thinking about what's good, the student loans, mortgages, home equity lines of credit, again, tools to improve your financial situation or your financial comfort level within your household. Bad debt is things that it takes forever and compounds in quite a way that will derail your plan or increase your outflows on a monthly basis just because of the interest. So personal loans, borrowings for something that immediately loses value. There's a statistic that I like to share. In 2016, there was consumer debt in America was about $12.25 trillion. That's astounding. And Americans are paying an average of $6,700 in interest per year. The average household with debt owes over $15,000 on their credit cards, and nearly 80% of American families have credit card debt. And also, if one has a credit card, most of them have a pretty large balance on their cards and don't pay it off at the end of the month. So take a look at the chart on the slide. If your debt is 30% or less of your pre-tax income, then you're in great shape. If it's more than 40%, red flags all over the place. Here's your red flag warning. You need to get that under control. Shelby, let's actually talk a little bit more about the credit score, if you don't mind. I actually put a slide in there to show how to raise your credit score. Thanks for flipping the slide. Mm-hmm. So I get this question a lot, like, what does your credit score entail? How is it calculated? What does it really matter? And it's really important to know that your credit score, take a look at the bottom of the slide, will show that it's based on 5 factors, each weighted a little bit differently. So 35% of your credit score is based on your payment history. 30% is the amount owed, of debt. 15% is length of credit history. 10% is new credit. So if you were going to get a new credit card and you actually applied for 2 to 3 credit cards at the same time, your credit score will go down just from that. And then, of course, 10% is the type of credit used. So if you have a really high interest rate personal loan through a bank or something like that, it's known that, that's a different kind of credit. Personal loan, it's basing it off of your past credit history. So 10% of your credit score will be derived based on that type of credit used as well. So the question is, well, what can I do about that? How do I raise my credit score so that I don't go backward with it and I can increase my score? The higher the score, the lower your interest rate usually. So you have to be really mindful about your credit. Think about your credit rating. How you use your credit not only has cost implications, but it can also directly impact your overall credit rating. And lenders view this. They view this all the time. So there are a few credit card do's and don'ts that I would like to share with you. So do make sure that you shop around for the right card. Look for features and rewards that best meet your spending needs. And always read the fine print on those applications. Pay off the entire balance on time every month. Do know the minimum finance charge in case you occasionally have to carry a balance and you aren't surprised by how much that interest charge is. Consider using credit cards for emergencies only if you must. And remember, the idea is to actually put aside some money into an emergency fund so that you don't have to revert back or choose the credit card instead. And then just make sure that you keep track of every credit card purchase each month so you don't overspend. Going back to budget, you want to know what you're spending, what are you spending on, what are your habits, you want to improve your habits and make sure that you're able to adjust to how much you're using and how much you're spending in your monthly payments. Don't pay your bills late. Don't use a credit card if you can help this. Don't use a credit card for purchases less than 10 bucks. These small purchases can add up fast. Try to use cash instead because it's like the psychological mindset when you're handing cash over to a cashier. You hate it worse than handing over your credit card and actually not seeing that cash leave your hand. So try to practice using cash. And don't carry balance if you can avoid it. It's best to pay off the entire balance before the end of the grace period so you don't have to pay the interest.
Perfect. All right. How about the kids? How do we teach them to start thinking about their finances?
Well, I have 3 kids of my own, and I really try to use every opportunity to talk to them about money. So it really depends on how open you are and comfortable you are talking about money with your children, but they learn early and they understand the value of money if you can teach them on an ongoing basis. And for many families, talking about money is completely uncomfortable, but it's important to move beyond that because you are there to teach your children how to make good decisions with their money, and it starts early. I remember going to the grocery store with my mom when I was, 7 or 8 years old, and I would put something in the cart and she'd say, Amy, we don't have money for that. And I knew that we had enough money for it, but it was this mindset of her having to pay for something that she didn't choose to pay for. It was me putting it in the cart. And she'd say, well, I have to pay for that. And I'd say, well, you can just write a check. I didn't really know the difference between, actually having money, writing a check, using your credit card. What's the difference? You have plenty of checks in your wallet, I used to say to her. So I think it was a really good opportunity for my mom to say, well, these checks actually mean something. or if you're talking to your children right now about money, like when I swipe my card, whether it's a debit card or credit card, what does this mean for my future? So really have that open dialogue and make sure that you are teaching your kids at every opportunity when they're asking, how much does this cost? What does this mean for my future? And importantly, set a good example. I think it's really important to ensure that you're setting the right example. I talked to my son about, buying skins on his video game, and I'm like, that is a non-tangible. You will not get anything out of that. So don't try to spend your money on this that you will never see again. And so really, having this open dialogue is important, and use age-appropriate activities. I mean, everything changes as your kids start saving money and knowing what the cost is of buying something, or if they have actually worked and gained an allowance, they know that those hours of work mean something in the form of money. So make sure you're having an ongoing conversation along the way.
I think that, no worries. I was just going to say, I think that parallels healthy habits too, like eating healthy. If we tell our kids to do it, it's one thing, but if they see us doing that, whether it's eating healthy or spending our money in a healthy way, that's the most powerful thing. So I think that's a great parallel for anything that we do in front of our kids.
Totally agree with you. Actually, the next topic is investing. And I think this is one to really start talking to your kids about too, if you can. Investing is, taking your money and doing something really worthwhile by investing in maybe a company that you like to buy things from, or you use their products on a daily basis, and having conversations with your kids about, hey, you're wearing, Under Armour shorts or an Under Armour t-shirt. Do you want to invest in the company? I mean, you're helping their bottom line by buying their products, but do you want to invest in the company? So that's a really good way to start out by saying, if you invest in a company, you're investing in the idea that they are going to grow, and that the money that they bring in and make can multiply over time. So when we're thinking about investing, one of the ways that I talk to people about it is, think of a company that you would like to own part of, and put some money into that company to hopefully watch it grow. Investing doesn't mean just one company, though. There's lots of different ways to invest, and the principles of investing really don't change. The economy changes. You can't time the market. Markets change. We know what's going on in international markets right now. They're up and down and super volatile, but that is at this period of time. So what you do when you're thinking about investing is know how much volatility you are willing to handle with your own money, how much movement that you want to see your money go up and down, and make sure you know yourself and your risk tolerance and set your goals based on that. So first and foremost, again, know yourself, set your goals, set a time frame or when you want to reach your goals, make sure that they are smart and actionable. Number two, spread your money out between stocks, bonds, and cash. That will help reduce the volatility of the overall stock market. Number three is to put your eggs in more than one basket, meaning don't buy just one company and bank on that one company to grow over time. It might be a really good idea to diversify into several different types of investments so that you can mitigate risk and reduce that volatility. And then be really smart, tax smart with your money. If you have a really large capital gain, make sure you're looking to offset it with a loss if you have that. A financial consultant or an advisor can absolutely help you with that, as well as a tax accountant. So, really ask a lot of questions and stay involved. So I think that's about it. Do you want to go to questions now?
Yeah, absolutely. We can certainly do that. I'm going to touch quickly on the next webinars coming up here, and then we will open it up for some questions. I do have some that have come in, but I do want to let you guys know that we will be posting a link to some more in-depth information for all of the questions that Amy talked about today, and a lot of those will be linked to the schwabmoneywise.com site, which is a great resource for more of those financial questions. Again, that's going to be on the blog post. That's going to have the recording to this webinar and the PDF files for the slides. So again, just a quick reminder of the upcoming webinars here. Next month, fresh finds, incorporating more veggies, all that good stuff. We'll talk about that since we're in good starting seasons for spring and growing our veggies and fruits. And then in June, we'll be talking about improving that Health Check 360 score. We're actually going to have a two-part series this year. First is going to be on nutrition and exercise. Second session will be on sleep and stress, so we can get more in depth on each of those topics. And again, that's all on our blog, healthcheck360.com/blog. And then here's our contact information. As always, you can email. We're on all of the social media here, but let us know if you have anything that pops up, any other questions. Otherwise,